everybody and welcome to my channel. This is Leslie. Thank you for joining me today. Today I am showing you another video of a layout I am making for the guest design spot of February for Cheeky Studio, and I was given this beautiful collection from Catherine Martin. It's called Norwegian Wood. If you are interested in this kit, I will leave a link down below to the Cheeky Studio shop for where you can get this kit. I know there's still some kits available, so you are welcome to have a gander. And I'm going to try and use, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to use the bows today, but I'm going to try and use some of these enamel dots and the flare, and also some of the ephemera pack and the papers. Now, the paper that I had mostly thought of using today was this paper. I'm thinking of cutting it up in strips and seeing what I can do with that. Also some machine stitching to be involved. So let's get going. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is just organize that paper into strips that I want to use, and I'm going to cut it about 6.5 inches in width and then cut along the strips. Now I'm planning on adding white torn paper between each of those colored strips, so I'm not going to be using all of those strips. I'm also not going to be cutting all of those strips out, so some of them are really thin and some are a bit thicker, and you know what, I didn't cut them perfectly. There's some color from the next strip on the previous strip, but you know what, that's also okay. You don't really see it in the end. It doesn't take away from the overall aspect of the layout, and that's sort of a thing we need to realize, is that it's not worth being nitpicky over little things, because when you look at a layout, you look at the whole layout. You don't just look at teeny tiny little aspects. And I think that is the thing of us being creators, is that we want every single little bit of the layout to be perfect. Meantime, when someone else looks at the layout, they look at the whole and not at the sum of all parts. So anyway, so I'm just taking some plain excess cardstock I had from another project I was doing, and I am ripping it up. I'm trying to get the pieces as straight as I can. Yeah. As straight as you can rip paper, that is. And I'm just going to be ripping, I don't know how many strips, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 strips. I'm going to be placing them in between my my other strips. Now, as you see, I just draw one line with my ATG down the center of the page, because I'm planning on sewing these strips onto the paper, and I don't want to gunk up my needle too much. Now I do adhere these strips a bit to the left of the page, so I'm going to fix that later on. You'll see how. At the moment, I didn't realize, at that stage I didn't realize that it was a bit too much to the left and not as centered as I would have liked, but I'm going to be placing them sort of some a bit to the left, some a bit to the right, some a bit off center, and so on. And I keep on bringing back my T-square ruler to just make sure that everything is nice and straight. You know, it doesn't have to be perfectly straight, but I didn't want to go completely wonky with these strips, because they are quite straight in themselves, you know. I am trying to keep the colors as random as I can, and as spread out as I can. I don't want to put a yellow next to a yellow or a pink next to a pink, so I am trying to get them as randomly spread out as possible. Now, some of those white strips were a bit too white for my liking, so I add some of those the very thin strips onto the onto the white strips. And you can see that I'm vigorously rubbing onto the paper, and that is where the ATG glue sort of peeks out from underneath the paper. And if you rub hard enough, then the ATG glue comes off, and you'll see, I don't think I'm doing it with that one, but the previous one I definitely did that. And yeah, I want to keep it as random as possible. So see, I didn't even use all the strips I cut out in the end. And here I bring in my sewing machine. I am going to fast forward this bit because it did take a while and it's very monotonous. So I'm just going to be stitching over each strip. And yeah, just a plain straight stitch, nothing to it. I did leave the threads in the ends. I wanted a lot of texture on this layout, and I wanted the threads to sort of peek out on the ends of the strips. And here I'm just stitching the last of my strips. And here I realized this whole thing is a bit to the left, and I think, okay, well, it would be nice if I have a border. So I cut a whole inch off the right hand side of the layout, and then half an inch off the top, and then half an inch off the bottom, and that sort of centers that the whole thing, the whole strip that I stitched, that sort of centers it all. And at the back there were a lot of the threads, and I just cut them off and collected all the threads, and I'm going to use them later. I placed them to one side, and you'll see how I'm going to use them later. Now, this is a photo of me and my son, and he has sort of reddish blonde hair, and in these photos his hair looks very red, which I love. Red hair is my favorite. It's my favorite hair. So it's my favorite. So and there I bring in the bit of thread that I cut off the back, and I just made a thread nest behind that floral cluster. Now, some of these clusters, it's the they come in the ephemera pack, especially the single flowers. That one that I'm placing there, that's part of the ephemera pack. And then some of the clusters I actually fussy cut from the sheet with all the flower clusters in. So I do place that orange leaf at the top there because I wanted to bring out the color of my son's hair a little bit more to the top, and especially with that orange leaf at the bottom of the layout as well, peeking out from that light blue flower or the light green flower, whichever way you can see it. So I did want to bring in a flare button, and I thought that that little orange flower flare button would be perfect as a center for that light aqua colored flower. So I thought there would be some, I needed to bring in some more leaves just to add some more interest to the layout. And I do add butterflies. I'm not a, how do I say this? I'm not one of those that won't put, that have an issue with putting flowers or butterflies on boys' layouts. I mean, I'm all over the place. So I try to be experimental in the colors I use, and I try not to be gender specific when I do my scrapbooking. It's easier to be gender specific, I think, because some of the collections are really gender specific, like baby blue collections and baby girl pink collections. So but with this collection I find that the colors lend itself to sort of both girl and boy. I'm not too I love the busyness of the pattern, and that sort of and the dark, you know, the colors are very dark in this collection, so it doesn't lend itself to one specific to one specific a boy or a girl. So I'm just getting some more thread from my sewing machine because I needed some more thread at the bottom of my layout in that cluster at the bottom left, excuse me, because I added all of that thread to the top right of the layout. And there's a lot of thread in this layout that's peeking out everywhere, and I really, really, really love it. I still have not used colored thread in this way like Missy Wooden does. She's my inspiration when it comes to this thread nesting. I'm still stuck on white. I think I have to be a bit more adventurous to be able to do it with color. I will get there one day. So I wanted to frame this layout, and this zigzag patterned paper was perfect. So I'm just going to gut the inside of this paper. But the problem was that I had already cut strips off the top side of this paper for my layout last week. So it wouldn't cover the entire back of the layout. So I needed to make a plan. And then I brought in this other paper with the little leaves, and that worked perfectly. You know, you can see that there's something different in the pattern, but it's because the colors are so similar, and it's also a very busy pattern. You don't really see what's going on. So what I do is I just place the pattern to where I want it on the layout. I place the paper on my paper trimmer just to 12 inches, and then I cut it off, and then the entire layout is exactly 12 inches. So I wanted to do some more stitching, of course, because there can never be enough hand stitching or machine stitching on a layout. So I bring out my machine again, and I'm just going to stitch around the edge of the layout, and there you go. And this layout came together really quickly. I hardly had to do any major editing. I mean, sometimes it takes me 3 or 4 hours to do a layout, and then I have to make the video 15 or 16 or 17 minutes long. So this came together really quickly, and it's I think it's because it's got such beautiful papers. And I just want to thank Tuesday from Cheeky Studio again for giving me this opportunity to be a guest designer for the month of February. And if you are interested in this kit, please head on over to the Cheeky Studio website. I know that they still have some of this available, and you would be able to get yourself one of these beautiful kits. This is really gorgeous, and as you can see, it's very versatile. I think the main thing with this kit was autumn or fall or winter, but I'm using it just in day-to-day life, really. So what I did next was I was using those Project Life little enamel shapes, and I'm just going to be placing them very randomly around, just for pops of color around the floral clusters. Now you can see that I did use some extra glue because they're not very sticky. So this is it for this layout. Please have a look out for next week. I'll have another layout for you there, and stick around for the discount code at the end of the video. Bye.